So I want to say something about the concept of God in the book of Genesis in the Bible. And I think the situation with so many atheists reacting against Christianity really has to do with the interpretation of that book and the beliefs held by people because of its contents. And what I'd like to say has to do with its original intent, the intent of the original author. And I don't claim to be that person or to have any kinship with them, obviously. But I don't think that most Christians, followers of Jesus Christ, realize that the book of Genesis was written 400 or more years before he was supposedly born. And if you look at the content of that book, and you look at the content of older scripture, older forms of that same information, which that same information exists in other forms in other scriptures, you find that there's an inconsistency between what was probably intended in that story and what people actually believe. But the whole concept of what God is defined right there in the beginning of the chapter of Genesis. And the reason that this is so important is because the word God is almost defined there at the very beginning of the book. And I think it's really tragic that so many people seem to think that that book is trying to say that God is this ineffable creature that created our world in over a 7-day period. In other words, on Monday he did this, on Tuesday he did this, and on Wednesday he did that, and then on Sunday he rested. I think that is an incredible tragedy that people take that literal interpretation of that passage. And I think it has led to some of the pathology and some of the delusions involved with the various interpretations in the other books. And it doesn't seem to me as if the authors of the latter books of the Bible, at least some of the authors of the latter books of the Bible, even understood the chapter of Genesis, the book of Genesis. And there seems to be this conceptual disconnect among the various authors about what God really is and who God really is. And the first reference to God is when Genesis says, "And the Spirit of God moved upon the dark waters." And if you think about what would be the dark waters, considering that God is our Father who art in heaven, the dark waters would be the blackness of space. And the movement of God's Spirit would imply what God was. And if that light is the movement of God's Spirit, then God itself is what is in the heavens. That is God. And so the Son of God is the sun in our sky. It's the sun that is the brightest sun in the heavens. And that was the original understanding of what God was and how this works. And it goes all the way back to the times when we worshipped the sun. And the three wise men that found Jesus in the manger were following a star. They were astrologers. And this understanding, this knowledge, this piece of information about what is in the chapter of Genesis is key. It's a cipher for the rest of the book. Without understanding that, you can't claim to understand what's in the book. You can't claim to understand the Bible, in my opinion. And so this whole conversation about whether God exists is ridiculous from the standpoint of what Christianity was supposed to be. And I just think it's a terrible tragedy.